All right, we are live. It's just Dave and I. We're not. This isn't the show. Normally, this is where I would say podcasters roundtable round, and we'll talk about intros. But Dave and I are just killing some time with the. We wanted to do it with you guys. If you're watching live, I will edit this later so that we can keep our stats, but also if you guys have questions in the chat, hit us up. Daniel's on his way, and then we'll do the official
with the
podcasters
official
roundtable.
Yeah.
And then because YouTube has a basic editor, I can chop that, right? Normally this podcast doesn't get edited. The video doesn't, and not much audio. I edit the you know what? I might as well hit record now. We'll do that whole thing because that is something I usually forget.
Are you
So
still using an H4?
No.
Have we gone Roadcaster?
I use the Roadcaster. Yeah, I've used the Roadcaster since I got it. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure I did a setup where I recorded separately before the Roadcaster, but we probably did.
Yeah, you had some sort of H6 something Zoom thing.
I mean, there's been so many, right? I have the H4 in. There's the H6, but I didn't use those. Oh, I used the Tascam DR60D when we started this show. That's right. And it was a wonky setup, man. Cables coming into this and or out of this and into that. Oh man. Forget that stuff.
It's amazing. Somebody had a mixer the other day. They're like, they had bought equipment like 5 years ago. And they're like, yeah, I'm ready to get going. I'm like, okay, great. What I got this and that. And then I have this Behringer mixer. And I was like, oh, wait, what? And I was like, okay. And I had to like really dust off like, wait, how did we do mix minus again?
Mix minuses. We don't have to do that anymore, right? Like mostly it's done for you. I'm trying to think. There are a couple situations where like an analog mix minus might be necessary, but I feel like if you're trying to bring in extra sources, it's harder to bring in like other sources. Now with the Roadcaster, I'll Bluetooth in my phone.
Right.
If I need to bring in an external, because you can't just like play something off your computer and put that into the mix, or can you? Well, maybe the Roadcaster 2.
If you have a second computer, yeah, that's the thing.
Right. So you got to interface, but even then, if they don't have line inputs, so you bring that in XLR? What do you do? A quarter inch to XLR?
Like right now, it's connected to my Mac as like whatever USB 1 or whatever.
Right.
And then I have the second one is going to my PC. So I can actually play something on my Mac and have it go into, which I guess isn't really anything that special. I know when I first bought it, I was like, why do you need two inputs? Who has two computers? And then
you have that phone input, right? The analog phone input. Didn't they take that out?
They took that away.
I do because they took that out. The preamps get really good.
Are
the preamps way better? Can you run the SM7B? We see without a FET head and have it be really clean. That's like the only reason I would get the 2.
Yeah, from what I hear, I need to troubleshoot. I have a weird on my one channel. I was getting a weird kind of hiss, and I need to figure out if that was the channel, the cable, or whatever it was. But the good news is Mr. J. Lewis is here.
He's here, so we can do an official intro. Hold on. Oh, see, I can't do. Man, it's so funny. We have not been here in so long. Daniel, we are just chatting live. We haven't started.
Okay.
We are live. We haven't rolled in the official intro, but I haven't been here so long that I use StreamYard at work, but it's premium. I have backgrounds for all my shows. I don't have the Mallard. Dave has the Mallard. And I come here and I'm just like black background. So maybe this is the New Year's cleaning house that I'm looking for as well. I'll add it to the list of things I'd like to do with PR. All right, let's
officially start.
Let's officially start. I think everything is good here. Daniel, let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm so sorry about
getting I shouldn't, because I know we talked about, I thought the Friday wasn't good for you, so we went to Thursday. But then I also confused it by putting that other live stream, and it was on a Friday, which is the last thing that's in our Slack channel. So,
well, yeah, and I was thinking even like, well, it's a Friday. I was hoping he was going to do it on a Thursday, but I can juggle some things around and make it barely work. But I got that hard out right at 8:30.
Yeah, no. All right, cool. Well, I'm glad you could jump in because I was like, what are we gonna? I didn't really want to do it with just the two of us.
Just Dave. That's so
We'll do the
boring.
original three.
Yeah.
I just don't have anything to talk about anymore, you guys. So I need
Oh,
you guys
there's
to hold
plenty
up
to
shit.
talk
I'm
about.
kidding. There's always something to talk about.
We could ask ChatGPT.
That's right. Oh yeah, host Podcasters Roundtable in the style of Ray Ortega. Oh, that's what I was looking for. I was gonna look. Where's the brand? Here we go. I was gonna bring up the names. Why not? And let's see. Do I have any backgrounds? I have no custom backgrounds for this show. I got to get one of those. And I have no banners. Wow. I do this every day at work, and it's so nice. I have all the graphics built. All right.
And the cobbler's children are without shoes.
That's right. All right. Now we'll make this, and I can make the cut it in YouTube afterwards. Here we go. Podcasters Roundtable round 163. New year, new podcast? Question mark. All right. Since we are at the start of a new year, it's 2023 at the time of this recording. What are some things that you as a podcaster might want to think about updating? It's kind of like a spring cleaning for the new year. All right. So PR, as an example, Podcasters Roundtable. We could use it's my job to get this stuff. I should get an updated logo. That would be nice. Still original logo. Looks kind of dated. It probably was dated when I made it, but some new gear. I already did that one. This is a face cam, so I'm enjoying that. Maybe some new CTAs or where those CTAs are, and that is a lead into something we're going to talk about for sure. Maybe an update to the schedule. Haven't been here in a long time, so do we need to refresh that? And perhaps even some tweaks to the format. So all of these things bring up their own questions, all these decisions you have to make. So we're going to talk about the kinds of things that you might consider updating your podcast. But like New Year's resolutions, we might be lucky to accomplish one of those, but sometimes it's the thought experiment that actually counts. All right. So, man, it's been so long. Co-host Dave Jackson, welcome back.
Glad to be here. I'm with you. I think I'm officially giddy that the original three. Not that there's anything wrong with having the new roundtabler, but it's kind of cool to get back to the basics. And glad to be here.
Back to basics. I can't say it doesn't rhyme. I'm like core four, the original three. It doesn't matter. Yes,
Nah.
if you were around for this show in like 2012 or something, whenever we started, it was just the three of us, and I think we might have started with a fourth. Yeah, there was the first person. Anyways, yes, it is the original. It's just host today. We thought this would be a fun way to kick off, not only not being here for a long time, but the first one of 2023. Dave, can you tell me one thing that might fit into this like refresh or things maybe tweaks?
Oh, dude, the thing that I'm doing, and I'm so glad I did, was there's a guy on YouTube named Carl Poulin. If you Google like Todoist on YouTube, he's the guy that comes up. And he said, look, really to be organized, you need three things. You need something to like a to-do list. You need something to capture your thoughts. So that could be OneNote, could be Evernote. I use Evernote. And then you need a calendar. And he goes, and when something comes into your inbox, you either go, all right, is this something I need to do later? Is it a thought that I need to capture? Or is this something I'm going to turn into a meeting? And I did that. And then I went through all of my folders and files. And now I have one folder called podcasts. And then in there's School of Podcasting, there's Ask the Podcast Coach, whatever. So I go into the shows folder. There's a folder called episodes. There's one that's called production, and that houses all the intro and outro music and artwork and things like that. So I just basically I did spring cleaning. And it's amazing when you don't have to spend 20 minutes looking for that one rim shot file that you know is on your computer somewhere. So that's kind of one of the things I've done so far that has already been making an effect. And the dumbest thing, it's like you said, you try to do one of your things. And my one thing is when I wake up in the morning, look at my to-do list. Like that's the habit. And when I do that, I go, oh, I need to do this today and that today. So it's again, it gets the ball rolling in the right direction.
Very cool. Daniel J. Lewis, co-host, welcome back.
Thank you. It is so exciting to be back. For me, the big thing that I've been doing is bringing back my podcast. The Audacity to Podcast is back and it's consistent. And it feels so much like being a new podcaster. Like even with the whole thing of my downloads are much smaller than they used to be. So now I'm thinking of all of these things of different ways to grow my audience and different things that maybe I need to clean up in my processes, especially since the only time I can podcast is while my son is at school or if he's asleep. That's how I'm able to podcast tonight, is he's in bed mostly. And so I have to optimize my workflows. It means cutting out some things that I do. It means simplifying certain things. It means not necessarily trying to be as in depth on certain things, but I'm finding that it's still as fun. And I haven't heard any of my audience complain about shorter episodes or simpler subjects or anything like that. So I think that it's working. And it's nice to clean up some things here and there and simplify the processes a little bit.
Yeah. So as we think about it from, probably most of the people who watch this show or listen to this show, we're available both youtube.com/podcasters roundtable. And they probably have been podcasting. And some people are thinking about starting a show, and hey, you have clean slate. Like, Daniel, I feel you. This feels like a new podcast. Although this feels so familiar. Like, even though it's been a long time since we've done this, we're clicking back in, which is really cool. But for people who have an established podcast, it's also change. Like, it could be hard. If you get the ball rolling, things are working. If it ain't broke type thing, why fix it, right? And I don't know, Dave, School of Podcasting couldn't be any more established. Is that show set? Like, or are you always feel like, you know what, this year I want to do something else. I'm going to change. I'm sure you've changed your CTAs. Let's get into that, right? So it's calls to action. I'm sure that's changed. And whatever you were thinking, you can talk about that instead of CTAs. But as an example, School of Podcasting, is it on autopilot? I mean, the content obviously has to change and improve, but everything else, the website works, the logo works.
Yeah, that the branding part. I am, a website is always, just one tweak away. We're always like, oh yeah, I need to do that one thing. There's that, but it dawned on me. It had been about probably 3 or 4 years since I'd done a poll of my audience to like, hey, I've been bringing out this stuff out to the table and putting it on your plate, going, here's some more stuff to eat. I haven't asked you in a long time. Is this what you want to eat? And I was surprised. I've gotten some pretty decent feedback on, and it's always fun because some stuff people are going to love. Some people love the sound effects. Other people, not so much. So it's interesting just taking the temperature of your audience to go, okay, I think this is what you want. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's tough for me is when you've been doing it a while, you end up going, oh, I know, I'll do a show about such and such. And then you go, oh, that was episode 427. Hold on. And so I run into a lot of people that it's not the tech, it's not this, it's the imposter syndrome that stops people. So I actually have worked on this for probably the better part of probably a couple of years. Anytime I heard a celebrity say something about imposter syndrome, I would grab the clip and stick it there. And I finally had enough that I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring this out and make it its own episode. So that sometimes gets to be a little challenging. Instead of just like, hey, I'm going to post this episode again, I always try to come at it like I've got new stuff on this old, concept or topic or things like that. So that can be a little challenging.
And then, I mean, I like the idea of the poll. Like, do you guys it's kind of like going live in the beginning. Like, you might want to do it just to be established in the fact that you're doing live. You've always done live, but a poll when you don't have an audience yet. But even for an established podcaster, like, when do you? That is a good one to say, you know what, this year we're going to get a better idea of who our audience actually is. And I actually brought this up to some of my hosts at work. And I said, there are these things, there are polls, and we can do this, right? Because we were thinking about this one topic and they were trying to decide, I don't know if people want to hear about that. And I said, well, it depends. If those people are also, science writers, then we're talking to the right people, but we don't know. Let's poll them. So there's people right now asking, I can hear them shouting at the YouTube. What are they talking about? How do I do that? What is it? Daniel, do you poll your audience?
I have once before. Primarily it was I wanted to rebuild aspects of my website. So I was asking my audience, my email audience, and I think I might have asked my listening audience as well. But I asked them questions about the website, like what do you come to the website for? Do you ever visit the website? Do you find what you're looking for? Certain things like that, because I was in the process of planning the website redesign and I needed to know that kind of information. And I know a lot of people talk about SurveyMonkey, but SurveyMonkey has a limit. What is it now? 100 responses?
I think.
And I expected
Hmm.
to get more responses than that. I don't think I did. But what I used instead, and I have Gravity Forms, so I have the ability, that's a plugin for WordPress that lets you build any kind of form you want. I have the ability to make my own survey, but I wanted something that could show me the results in a more visual way than would require the hacking around with Gravity Forms. So I used PollDaddy, which is from the company that makes WordPress, and it's free and surprisingly very unlimited. I know you
Full
can't really
featured.
measure unlimitedness, so you can't say very unlimited. It's very uniquely very unlimited. There we go. The grammar nerds will love that. And it worked really well. It was easy to set up. And the information I got from it, especially the empty boxes where I asked people an open question, those answers were really helpful to just get into their minds and understand a little bit more why do they think this way.
You get the most interesting stuff on those. So we use, I guess, like a SurveyMonkey, and it's been fine because we ask, like, you don't also want to be careful about how many questions you ask, right? So you want people to complete it ideally. So we try to ask like the best 7 or 10 questions, but definitely have that like open-ended at the end, because we receive some of the best feedback in terms of it's just like either it's just motivating to hear people talk about who they are and why they listen, or they have like a really good idea and you're like, didn't even know, right? And so that can help a lot. Dave, are you using the Libsyn has their own poll system?
Libsyn has a very, it's not, they ask all the basic demographics,
Right.
And
But that's the thing. People might not even know what to ask. So at least, I mean, even if you don't use the Libsyn one, is there's like where would you guys go get a sample of like what to ask? Daniel, do you have like a kit, or Dave, do you have a kit that says, here's what you should be asking in terms of demographics and stuff to get even for advertisers?
Yeah. Edison Research has a poll thing, whatchamacallit, that you can use as like a sample.
Okay.
And then I used Google Forms. I basically looked at their questions like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. And then I had a couple very specific that I wanted.
There's got to be some podcast specific questions, right, Daniel?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Edison Research put out.
And they know the best.
It's literally their business
to
ask these kinds of questions, and good questions to get good results.
Yeah, because you also then, I think it's really important in your setup, because I don't know, what do you guys, it's nice to be able to ask the same survey, the same poll for years and years to come and be able to compare them. You know what I mean? Like they can stack up, as opposed if you go and change it. I don't know if you can really compare the two. I don't know. Maybe it's good to iterate. Maybe it's updating your poll. Would you do that? That's a question. If you are a podcaster who's been doing a poll and you're like, you know what? I didn't even talk about Spotify. Like if you asked, do you listen on Spotify? Like it's not in there. Would you add stuff to your poll as your sort of New Year's resolution type cleanup?
It depends on the goal. It's stuff like, do you listen on Spotify? Well, you can get that information from your stats to see how many people listen on Spotify. But asking your audience that question, even though it's somewhat redundant, can help you attribute certain data to a certain demographic of
maybe
your
even
audience.
Why, right? Like why do you listen on Spotify?
Yeah, so you can see, okay, everyone who listens on Spotify tends to think this way about my podcast. Now, it might not necessarily be so siloed like that, but that is a benefit to asking some of that. And so some of that stuff, you can update slightly as the years go on, maybe just adding an option here or there. But for me, when I think of surveying my audience, it's because there's something very specific that I want to know from them, because I'm thinking of changing something, or I'm thinking about something. And so I want to provide a way that they can provide responses to me. It's actually customers of my podcast reviews that I've surveyed a lot more than the audience of my podcast, because The podcast is much easier and dynamic, whereas the product, I need to make sure that it's serving the needs of the customers so that they'll keep paying for it.
Yeah, I just put the link, but it's a long link, and I was actually trying to copy it, Dave, so I could put it in the show notes. But if you guys are watching this, I will put the link to the Edison research in the show notes, or if you're listening in the app, you should be able to swipe some way and get the link. I will try to remember to include that, even though I can't now. Like, how do I get that right now and put it in my? If I put it in the notes right now, we're good. I wish you can't copy and paste from the comment section here on StreamYard. Oh, by the way, you know what? Okay, I don't want to interrupt that, but let's continue on that for a second, just because of the whole idea that. Thanks, Dave. I see it pop up here in another chat, and the idea of, some people might want to get a sponsor. They're like, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. My stats tell me I've got 1,000 people listen to every episode. But a survey could be good for sponsor. They're going to want that, right? I don't know. Dave, is a sponsor going to? I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt to have that information, right?
Yeah, that's really where the whole demographic, how much school have you had? Do you have children?
Right.
Age, rank, serial number, whatever it is. That's the stuff for the sponsor stuff. I kind of want to know how old you are, because that way I need to know, do I need to mix in some more Billie Eilish and Pitbull references, or are we good with the Fonzie and Walton's references, kind of thing. So that kind of stuff I kind of care about, but sponsors really want to know, especially, are they well educated and do they have
Right.
money, kind of things. For me, I was asking really a lot about the length and the content is really what I was looking for in so much like Daniel was saying, it kind of depends on what you're trying to do and what you're looking for. So
Yeah.
That is a nice thing about not having to worry about sponsors. If you don't have sponsors, if you monetize in a different way, or you don't monetize at all, is then you can ask only the questions that you really want to know and not ask the questions that you don't want to know or don't need to know. Like, I don't care. I mean, I care. I don't need to know how much money my audience makes. I care that
Right.
they make money. I care about them, but I don't need to know that. They can keep that as private as they want to. Knowing their ages, that's kind of helpful, but how is that going to impact my content decisions? I don't make as many pop culture references as Dave makes, not nearly as many. So it's not something that really affects me what age they are, but maybe if I knew something like how many of them are on Windows versus Mac OS, since I now do everything on Mac OS and I'm on iOS for my mobile platform, I could know that, oh, wow, I'm making this up. I could see that maybe 90% of my audience is on Android and Windows. I need to make sure that whenever I mention something on Mac, that I definitely mention it on how to do that thing on Windows as well, so that I'm appealing to that broader portion of my audience. That kind of stuff is helpful and can then influence content.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many benefits to not having an advertiser. It's nice not to have a third party to worry about, right? Like you and the audience. Really nice. If you can spin it, I would say, if you are looking for revenue, like try to get that other ways. But if, advertising works for you, and it's not a thing where it's like, oh, I haven't been doing a survey and now a sponsor's coming along and wants to know. You can go get that now. Like you're like, oh, well, I want to know about the audience now. The advertiser wants to know about the audience now. So you're like, okay, let me run a poll because if you're looking at advertisers, I mean, if they're serious about you, probably, outside of like your own curated relationship, if it's like more of a third party type thing or through a network, they're probably, you probably have a decent amount of listeners, right? And so you could go out and be like, hey, for the next 4 weeks, we want to poll who's listening and get this. So you can get it. So like, I wouldn't freak out if you're like, oh, I haven't been collecting this for years. I'm not going to get an advertiser. So,
and if you wanted to, if you had like zero information, you could always, I think Edison Research has stuff on like,
right.
Here's what the typical podcast audience looks like. So if they, if you can kind of go, well, here's who's listening to podcasts, and you're not lying. You're not saying here's who's listening to my podcast. You're like, here's who's listening to all podcasts. And my
you have some
audience is probably
stats,
similar.
right?
Yeah.
You probably got to that point.
You could even aggregate and slightly average some of the data that you get from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. I would not rely only on Spotify alone, because that seems to be at least still for now, a particular demographic of people listen to podcasts on Spotify. So don't trust only one source of data, but maybe kind of average it out. And then you could kind of see, this is my general demographic from these platforms that provide such.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, if you know statistics, you can take an average. And, Apple Podcast, it's one of those things where also where's your audience, which is good to know. Like, where's the majority of your audience? We always say, you can get about 70% of that on Apple Podcast. And you can go into those stats and have a decent idea that, you get X number of downloads and they listen to this much of the episode or, whatever it is. So definitely something to do. I've had not a tremendous use for a survey. Although I would also say, like, we get to talk to our audience. We bring them on the show. The audience literally shows up on the show and they tell us why they're there. And it's sort of self-filtering. But, we do a live stream. So you can do your impromptu survey by asking your questions in the live stream. Dave, you probably do that. You do a lot of live streaming or have done a lot of live streaming. So you get a lot of information if you actually talk to your audience where they're listening. Of course, that is a very specific type of audience, right? Those are probably the power audience that are going to come to a live stream. But it's all information. It's all good information to have.
Yeah, I've often had an idea come through a chat room. We'll discuss it live, and then I'll take that idea, put it back in the oven, and bring it out on the School of Podcasting after I've kind of done some research and maybe had it a little more organized.
Yeah.
But
I had a thought about StreamYard. As you can see, we're on StreamYard because we got the Skype Mallard headphone duck. David's favorite. It's Dave's.
Yes,
it's Dave's
all of
duck.
The audio listeners can see that. Yep.
That's right. They can't see there's all the more reason to check us out. The link to the YouTube video will be in the description. But cool updates here at StreamYard. I remember when we started this show, like, I felt like every round I was telling you like what the updates were, because back then Google Hangouts was new, right? That's what we were using. And then I was like, part of it was like, let's learn this tool together. And then we went to StreamYard after, well, no, we went to, what was the other one in the middle? It was really good that went away.
Blab.
Google.
Nope. The chat, come on, Daniel. What was the middle?
Well, we used Blab for a little while.
Blab. That's it. Sorry, I didn't hear it. Blab, 100%. And we did a little Blab, and then we did StreamYard. And I remember always being like, oh, you can do this now with StreamYard. Anyways, the updates here, very cool. Individual, you have to pay. I don't get this because I'm doing the free version. But if you pay, because it's even on the basic version, which I don't want to say this too loud, StreamYard's listening, but it used to be if you wanted the separate channels, was that what it was? You had to go like the full version, but now you get separate channels on the basic premium version. Anyways, I've been using it at work a lot, and it's been perfect so far. I hesitate to say that, but this is not a thing tech-wise that is ever perfect. Things fall out of sync, but they are the on the shoulders of giants type thing. A lot of companies have figured out this browser-based recording. Things don't fall out of sync. Anyways, it's been really cool. If you're not on StreamYard or you're thinking about doing live streaming, it's definitely not an advertisement. Speaking of advertisers, it was just been a cool update that I was very excited about and has been working pretty well.
Well, and it's not here yet, but they have a kind of a webinar feature now where you can embed StreamYard in your website, but the live chat isn't there yet. And I'm like, I got to have the live chat. But when that comes to where I can embed the whole show into a website, because I used to love the fact that I would embed it into my WordPress site and I had my sidebar. So all my calls to action were on the side of the webinar.
You're saying embedding a video that's streaming directly from StreamYard? Because you can already embed the YouTube Live.
Right.
Are you talking about StreamYard?
I am talking about StreamYard, but they have some sort of, when they announced it, they made it sound like you could do YouTube with the chat thing on your own website.
I do that now. I've always done it. We're doing it now, but it is a sort of a hack. I'm just doing it with code that doesn't really exist publicly. Like, people don't talk about it, but it does work. It's on my website now.
I'm going to say, I'm looking at it now. I'm seeing us. We're frozen.
It's a little. It's also probably a little bubble gum and tape, because I do have to update the code and stuff like that. But they're probably giving you a much more streamlined process.
Yeah. So, but the other advantage of that is if you ever want to do something where you have people register for a webinar kind of thing, they're doing that as well. But I was all excited because I didn't want to do the whole code thing. I just want to copy and paste and instant webinar kind of thing. And
So
then I saw where it was like live chat coming soon. I was like, oh, almost.
we've all used a lot of different tools over time, and the reason why I stay here is because it seems to handle even the poorest connections the best. I've had others that just don't deal, like even good connections don't seem to hold very well. If I if I'm producing an episode on StreamYard on my desktop like I am now, and I have to run and go onto my phone, works really well. I'm a producer on these other shows behind the scenes, switching and bringing in all this stuff. Just going in on Safari, like on my iPhone, flawless, really cool UI. Anyways, again, not an advertisement, but live streaming might be something you think, oh, you know what? It's the new year. We're going to add live streaming, right? And so this is one good option that I would check out. You can do it for free to check it out. That's what we're doing here. So it's not very limited. You just don't get some of the cooler stuff, but we do perfectly good with the free version. And you know, if you're thinking about that, maybe hopefully you've been doing it for a while, because live streaming, again, I always try to tell people this is something you sort of, I don't know that I would add it in the beginning, right? If you're just make the podcast, right? But I don't know, you guys, is that something? Do you think you should be there if you're going to be live? If you're thinking about being live and you're starting a podcast, would you just go ahead and do it from the beginning, or could you overwhelm yourself?
Yeah, number two. I think that's going to be overwhelming. Live's a whole different kind of skill. I know at the beginning I was horrible because I'd be in the middle of, oh, look at this, the thing. I did it. I mean, I was all over the place. So I kind of have to train myself to, I'm making a point now. Here's my point. And now my point is done. Okay. Now I can look at the chat. So-and-so said this. So-and-so said that. Okay. Here's a chat that I want to kind of riff on. Let's put that on the screen. And now I quit looking at I was just all over the place. And then you have to be ready to hang up on people, because in some cases, I had a guy last week that kind of got a little nuts on talking about body parts and such. But also there are some people that you'll hear this a lot on sports radio. Will be like, I think we need to fire the coach, man. That guy's a hack. He's not doing it. And they're like, all right, great. He is, we're thinking about it, whatever. What else you got, Steve? I think the coach is a hack, man. He's awful. And at that point, okay, that's all really Steve wanted to say. And it's time to let him go. Thanks for the call, Steve. And then you move on. So if you're doing any, like when I use StreamYard, I take the link for people to join, and I make a easy to remember link. It's just askthepodcastcoach.com/join. So if you want to jump into the video, you can. And so I have to be ready to politely realize, okay, this person has said all they need to say. Let's transition. Thanks so much for coming on. What's your website? And, off they go to the next topic, kind of thing. So I could see it being a little overwhelming. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah. And even on the flip side of like watching the chat room too much, I've seen live streamers where they don't watch the chat room at all. So someone might leave a comment in the chat that says, oh, yes, I totally agree with you. They don't read that comment until an hour later when they're saying, hey, I think we should kill all puppies and kittens. What do you guys think? Oh, yeah. And Dave agrees with that. That's okay. Thanks, Dave. And it's completely messed up, the content. But I see live streaming. Now, there are some tools that can make it nice to kind of grow an audience with live streaming, like some of the audio focus tools, Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, Wisdom, some of that stuff. But really, I see live streaming as a way to engage your community. So if you don't have much of a community yet, then there's not all that much purpose to do the live stream. I remember being involved with a group recently that I was all excited about. I thought very prominent group. And I was shocked when I saw how few people came to the live events. I could count how many people came to the live events on one finger. And
Wow.
They had no audience. And
them.
Yeah. And so the quality of the live stream kind of suffered from that, because they would say things like, hey, if any of you watching live have any questions or any comments, leave them in the chat. And it's like, hey, you're talking to one person out there. It just sounds weird to say that. And imagine being that one person who realizes this kind of seems fake because you you see, I'm the only one here, right? And you're talking as if you've got this huge audience. What else might you be kind of exaggerating in other places? But it can be a fun way to engage your audience and let them engage with each other. And that's one of the reasons why I really like and really only promote any kind of live streaming service that has a chat room with it, or a way that your audience can engage with each other. That's what I don't like about some of these audio focused systems, is that they're really focused on real-time engagement between the host and the guest. Now that's beautiful in certain contexts and with certain talents, but it makes it hard to just quickly interject something from your audience, and it makes it hard or impossible for your audience to get to know each other and to comment on each other's things. This is one of the things I like about Dave's show, Ask the Podcast Coach, on Saturday mornings at 10:30 Eastern over at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. I didn't want to give him a chance to jump in and give his call to action. The chat room is lots of fun over there. Sometimes we're going off and having our own conversations. Sometimes we're talking about what's going on in the show. And then every now and then a comment is brought in. I did that with my TV after show podcast too, is we would be talking about a certain thing about the show, and I would be keeping an eye on the chat room as it's going by. As we're talking about something, I'd see someone would make an interesting comment. So then I'd look for a place to bring that into the conversation. Whereas if I did the thing of, they could call in, they could join the call, there'd be the whole thing of, oh, thanks for letting me onto the call. How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. It's great to talk with you, blah, 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 blah. 5 minutes later, they finally make their statement.
It's my pet peeve with Twitter Spaces are just terrible. Like, can we get a little organization? But you're not going to be rude, and people want to actually say, oh, I'm so happy to be here. So great to talk to you for the first time. But it's just so much extra that the listener generally doesn't need. So,
and there's a place for that.
Yeah.
I think for a podcast, that's probably not the place. And by podcast, I mean something you're probably listening to later and not participating in live. But if you're there when it's live, that kind of stuff can be great.
Yeah. We're going to engage the audience a little bit here in a second, but Dave, go ahead.
Well, I've learned to say, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. What's your question? Because inevitably they always feel they have to, and I get it, but they'll give me a ton of background.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't really need. And so if you listen to the video and then go listen to the audio, you'll hear me say, hey, thanks for coming on. What's your question? And presto, there's their question. Because the whole well, I'm using this microphone and blah, blah, blah. And I went to school in Indiana. I'm like, we don't care.
You could just change the name of your show. Maybe that is your 2023 improvement. The no background, ask your question, get to the point, and leave show about podcasting. Yeah, I think you got a new name. There's an acronym in there somewhere.
I love that one of the popular talk show hosts, I forget which one it was, but he takes call-ins, and someone called in and started off their call saying, how are you? And the host said, oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Next caller.
Yeah, next guy. Ask your question. Well, and so there's also different ways to live stream, right? We're doing this, and we'll bring in questions sometimes from the chat, but it's not really, we've always done this because, again, Google Hangouts made it easy to do video while we recorded our podcast and then basically have a YouTube video, right? So this is an easy way for us to also be on YouTube, because when I press stop, I am done as far as video goes in my case, right? And we're actually going to do a little editing to this one, but just chopping off the ends. So that's another way, like even an easy way to get into live streaming or an easy way to get onto YouTube. Whether you think you should do that or not, it's a whole other question. But there are different ways that you don't have to take a live caller. Maybe you answer your questions after the show, right? And maybe if you can, it helps to have a co-host. It helps to have someone who can moderate a chat room. They can bring in those questions afterwards if they list the good ones, or maybe you're doing that because you're having a co-host who's handling the bulk of the question. You're grabbing some other content in the meantime. So there's lots of different ways to enter into it. But asking questions about, I was talking about StreamYard. So Mike asked, is there any audio and video? Oh, is the audio and video good quality with StreamYard multitrack? And yes, it's great. It's you get a WAV file out, and the video. I don't do separate track video. We just use the video that's produced live, but I'm sure it looks mostly like what you put into it. Probably a little compression, but it's going to look pretty good, I think. But the audio is fantastic because it's all recorded right there in every person's browser. And you download that WAV file. And I don't know what the specs are on that, but it's great for podcast. And some people are not happy right now, but
And
they want specs.
are you using that when you publish this episode? Are you going to use the split track from StreamYard?
No. So we are doing we're on the free StreamYard. So I don't have multi-track. We didn't have, last time I did Roundtable, that didn't even exist. I am doing my own sort of Roadcaster. You guys record on one track, I'm on one track. And that's what you're always getting from the Roundtable. And it sounds fantastic. People wouldn't even know it wasn't your guys' audio. And that is doable only because we have a bunch of podcasters and they know how to do audio, right? Like normal podcasts, you could run into a lot of issues with trying to do a combined track. But no, and that makes it really easy for us to get out an episode.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they're doing, for lack of a better phrase, the Squadcast thing where they record locally and upload it, or if it's just a separate track of what came across.
No, it is. It's recorded in browser. It's browser-based recording, right? That's a Squadcast thing or Rivercast, Riverside. Too many casts. He also asks better or equal to Riverside, and so I also use at work a premium Riverside account, but for very specific thing. And honestly, if StreamYard starts doing this, Riverside might be in trouble because Riverside doesn't do the live streaming in my experience as well as StreamYard does. No one does, honestly. Yeah. But I use Riverside very specifically to get the highest resolution video recording. So if I wanted to record someone, back in the days of Skype, if you try to record someone's video, you get 720 at best in a lot of platforms. Now we're getting 1080. You can get 1080 out of StreamYard if you're upgraded. But you can get up to 4K. So if I have people with a really nice camera or anything, the video that comes out of that Riverside recording is fantastic. It's like the person recorded themselves. So it allows me as a producer to get the best quality video back to me. And that's why I still use Riverside for that very specific use case.
Yeah. Another feature that this has just turned into a StreamYard commercial, but I have my co-host set up as one of the team members because I have the paid version. And what he does is he can put a little star next to comments, and that there's actually a tab behind the scenes that when I'm like, okay, let's see, what do we have for questions? I can see he's kind of hand selected some from the chat room. And I know there's another feature. I don't know if it's a YouTube feature or a StreamYard feature that you can do polls and giveaways that I always go, oh yeah, I forget that's there. Because I remember one time I gave away my book and I was like, I need to do more of that because it was fun. And I believe there was even confetti involved. So, I mean, if there's confetti, who can beat confetti? So
why has YouTube dropped the ball so much? Like YouTube, just buy StreamYard. I don't want you to do that. StreamYard's doing fine on their own, and then YouTube will just kill it. But man, because some of the features, if you guys have ever done like the donations on YouTube and that kind of stuff, some of those features, Seamless works so well, and it's really cool. But we're still in the universe. The competition is good, but there are so many options. It's like, which one are we going to use? This one works better for this and that one. Now, oftentimes for me, it's a combination of services.
Yeah, now it's community tools. And it's weird because I've known a few people that have tried to move their community away from Facebook and they end up moving back. And I'm like, So, because it used to be there was like Mighty Networks and now there's Circle.so. I just bought a lifetime thing to Heartbeat whatever such and such. And there was Coach Vox, I think is this asynchronous thing.
Dave will try out all these for you, but they'll all be dead in like 6 months, and that's why you're back on Facebook. We need some real platforms to come up with good tools.
At least all of these new tools have all of their vowels.
Yes. Because now we've got many more domains. It's whatever.
That Web 4.0?
Voicecast.info.pizza.coffee, whatever it is kind of thing.
We did do a CTA. Daniel mentioned it. Let's get into a little bit about if you're an established podcast, if you're a new podcast, you're going to win because you're going to be able to get like the best like information that's already been tried a million times. No CTAs in this podcast up front. I do CTAs at the end, but it's probably too late because we've already signaled verbally that we're on our way out and people checked out. So Daniel, this was your list. And I know you did an episode on this. Speaking of CTAs, the audacitypodcast.com. I hope that's still right.
Yeah.
But check out, he did a whole episode on this. What did you want to say about CTAs and like a refresh to your podcast?
Well, we ask so much from our audience and so often overwhelm them with all of our calls to action or CTAs. And it's stuff like, hey, rate and review this podcast. Make sure you're subscribed. Donate through here and here and here and here. And then follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Plurk, on here, and all of these places. It's just so much that you're asking from your audience. And some people ask this all up front too.
Yeah.
And you just have to skip. Okay, I'm finally in the content. And I would really encourage podcasters, whatever stage you're in, I know there's a lot that you want your audience to do. And there's a lot your audience could do for you, but they're not going to do it if you ask them to do all of it. So really I encourage you to try to practice simplifying it, cutting it down, focusing on what is most important for your audience to do right now for this particular episode or this particular time. And maybe even include that as part of your content instead of dumping it all at the end where people know, oh, yeah, there's the background music. Okay, there's nothing else at the end of this episode except CTAs. So I'm just going to skip and get 30 more seconds of whatever the next podcast is I'm going to listen to. I just feel like we overwhelm the audience so much. And some of the stuff we don't really need from our audience.
It's almost certainly going to come up in context, kind of what you're saying, because I already gave a shout out for the YouTube channel just because I said, oh, if you want to see us, like you'll eventually get those sort of triggers in your head because I'm talking about video and our YouTube. I'm like, oh, check out the YouTube channel, right? Just naturally, right? And so, but that doesn't guarantee I'm going to give you that CTA, right?
And
mentioning YouTube I see some good examples, also bad examples, but on YouTube, there's I hate hearing it so much, but it's the,
like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe.
You have to say it. If you don't say it, they won't do it. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. So what do you do about that, right?
Yeah. Well, what's nice though is the good YouTubers have learned don't put that call to action at the beginning. Don't put it at the end. Put it somewhat near the beginning, but after you've already shared some content. So I see these videos where they have, the top 5 things. They'll share 1 or 2, right, and then they give that call to action, and it's very brief.
Listicle is subscriber.
Yeah. Well, it better not be the 4th item in your list is, the most awesome ways to make your year better is number 4, subscribe.
I mean, that I've seen a whole trend of this in the last year where it's like, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. You're cool if you know what I mean? As just a way YouTube is a great sandbox and to watch people test things out because what works, you'll start seeing everywhere. And you'll get different ideas because everyone's trying to separate themselves. They're trying to make something work. So I get a lot of even CTAs. I see them change when they don't change, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. But I also see YouTubers trying to do that differently. So
I would actually say just because you see it everywhere doesn't mean it works.
No, but that's true. 100%. It just means someone's copying someone else.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, and you can make your calls to action easier to remember. So instead of follow me on Twitter, I'm at such and such, and on Facebook, I'm such and such, and on this, you can just say, follow me at mywebsite.com/follow, and then have your Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and Face Chat. And what was it? Plurk? Was that a real thing?
Plurk? It was. It's gone now, I think.
It's gone. Dave, you didn't, it was here and it's gone. You had to have tried it.
I missed the Plurk thing. Yeah.
You didn't miss it. You just try so much you don't remember Plurk. Plurk was huge.
That's something you can do to, instead of giving them 5 calls to action, go, if you'd like to connect with me, go to mywebsite.com/connect. And there's your Twitter, there's your email, there's your phone number, your, whatever.
Which is way better besides all of that, because I had a show once where recently, the recent change we made was, what Twitter was going through all of its stuff. And it's like Twitter might not be here, right? Am I going to give you now Mastodon? All that stuff you're baking in is time sensitive, or it could be gone, right? It like if you're giving your Twitter every single time and now Twitter doesn't exist, what a wasted call to action. So Dave's saying, use your own branded URL, podcastroundtable.com/connect. And I can always switch up what is there. I don't know. That feels also like kind of an old person thing, because like a young person is going to be like, can you just tell me what you are on the gram? Like, and gram is old too. So TikTok, whatever. I am old.
Yeah. Well, Daniel just did an episode on this about why you should use, it reinforces your brand. But
Right.
when Patreon first came on, there was a thing from Google called Jaywalk that was very Patreon before Patreon. And so I jumped on Jaywalk, and then they got bought by Google and shut down. And I was like, ooh, I almost had like askthepodcastcoach.com/Jaywalk. And so that's when I made it askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome, because you're an awesome supporter. And that way it can point at Patreon, it can point at Heart Space, chat, book, whatever comes in the future. I can update that URL, and it's still my brand, and it's updatable.
I think there is a place for some specificity when the platform seems to be stable enough. So if you tell people something like join our Facebook community, or maybe more specifically, like follow me on Twitter at the Daniel J. Lewis, that's something that is going to be around for much longer, and you're less likely to change it. And even if I stopped using Twitter, I could still make my last tweet say something like, hey, I've stopped using Twitter, follow me over here instead. But with the things like the tools you might use, that your audience really doesn't need to know the brand of the tool you use. If I come to you and say, hey, everybody, I'm so glad to be talking to you through my Electro Voice RE320 today. I mean, the podcaster is okay.
I would be like, on your show, it's highly effective. You could sell a lot of RE320s.
Yeah, but for any other show, other than a podcast for podcasters, for any other show, they don't care. They don't even know what you just said. Was it even English? So like Patreon stuff or Jaywalk or some of that stuff, the brands of the tools you use don't matter to the audience. But if you tell people like, this is my Instagram or this is my TikTok, they most likely are not going to want to visit a URL, but they're going to want to just open up their app and search for you that way, which is somewhat of a broken workflow and depends on certain things. And I'm not saying then to just go back to listing all of your social profiles, especially if they have different names, but it's kind of be specific about, this is the one you're going to promote this episode, or something like that, where you're strategic about it.
Yeah. I mean, for us with the whole Twitter thing, what I also realized after years of promoting either Facebook or Twitter is that we weren't really we'd say, hey, let us know what you think about this episode. Tweet us at, whatever. And I'm like, we're not actually getting those tweets. So, we switched to, I think Dave's, share it with someone who would actually like this episode, right? Do you know someone who's also works in this science, the same science as you do? Because that's the audience, right? Maybe like a specific type of scientist or whatever your show's about. Share it with them. And sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I'd rather be putting that into the ether and having it do maybe one or two times. I'd rather someone else just turn someone else onto the podcast. So sometimes it's just an evolution of what you're seeing through stuff you're already doing. It's like, are we actually getting any tweets? We've been really promoting this to talk to us on Twitter, and we're not getting anything. So take a look at what you're currently doing. Is it working? Right. And then maybe just try something else.
I tried for like a month and a half. I don't know. I look at it now and go, what was I thinking? But I found this service that you could text a word to a number and it would auto reply. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to have people text 56, whatever, SOP to 56956, blah, 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 blah. And it would send them a link like, hey, if you're on an Android, click here to subscribe. If you're click here, whatever it was. And it was like, well, they're on their phone. They're on their phone. Why not just tell them to go to your easy to remember website? And so I was like, oh yeah, I could either have them type in the website or try to remember, what was that number again? 695. And what am I typing? I was like, that's the dumbest thing. But I tried it and it was like, I had one person that was like, sent me an email like, oh, that's kind of cool. And it somewhat works if you're speaking, because you can put a QR code up there, or you could say, I've seen somebody, I was at a room once and it was fairly full, and they said, oh, just text, like in my case, you'd be like SOP to 5476 blah. And I watched a bunch of people pull out their phone and go, because they had the number right in front of them, that they did it. But if I'm listening to the car, I'm on the treadmill, I'm like, yeah, that was an experiment that went about a month and a half. I got one person in and went, yeah, this is not the arena for that call to action.
Yeah, and do not put a QR code in your podcast show notes. So just open up your phone and scan the QR code in the podcast app. How?
Get a mirror. I don't even know if that worked. 2 mirrors, 3 mirrors.
The other thing about calls to action is we all get weird when we start promoting ourselves. So we either talk really fast because we don't like, kind of like it's like, no, slowly, concisely, confidently.
Yeah, people breeze right over it because they've said it every episode.
Yeah.
And they're just like, YouTube.com Roundtable. You're like, what was that the name of the show? Like, where am I going? Yeah, you really be deliberate.
I have to tell people, anytime I ask for somebody's website, I always have to say, be sure to slowly say your website, because I'd have the audio and I'd have to slow it way down and I'm like, I can't understand what they're saying because they just said, oh yeah, my website's .com, and I was like, I can't spell that. What was that again? So yeah, slowly, specifically, confidently do your call to action.
Sort of familiar to that and to this part of the conversation is like social sharing and link sharing and where you're promoting and how you're promoting. I had someone recently in an Instagram story say, hey, I started a podcast. Should I link to Spotify or do I post like to Apple, or, what link do I share? Like here. And I got into the DM and I was like, really you should probably share your website and then, let people go there because it's your brand. And then like everything they can jump off from. They shared the Spotify because they were younger, and it just and it opened Spotify. Like it just made more sense to them and to their audience. And at the same time I got it because I saw the link and I was like, yeah, probably this is better for the moment. And, and they got people to listen to the podcast right then when they click that Spotify link, right? Because then maybe it opens up natively in your social app and it's playing, right? And maybe that's all you really need is something to like try the podcast. I'm not even trying to get you to subscribe, really. I just want you to listen and maybe hook you, and then you can go to other stuff. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Is there any refresh to be done there in terms of how you share your podcast? Is that automated? Is it manual? Where do you share it to? How do you share it with the links? Like, what do you think?
Well, I use Daniel's plugin. So I just have big giant buttons at the top for what I consider the top 4, which are Apple, Spotify, Google.
But that's on your website, right?
That's on my website. So I reinforce my website. I go to, if you want to, go to schoolofpodcasting.com/follow. And that's actually, in that case, that's not Daniel's plugin. That's Daniel's link from my podcast reviews, which again, will look at the phone and go, oh, he's on an Android here. Let's give him this kind of stuff. So, because I'm always about giving the listener the choice, because I know I used to live and breathe and die from Overcast. So if there was an Overcast link, I was like, oh, cool, boom, one click and I'm in, and I don't have to copy and paste or anything like that. But I know a lot of people, James Cridlin let me know once that I think it's 75 or 70% of Europe is on an Android phone, and people used to only share Apple stuff. And I was like, man, and Apple has since fixed that. It used to be if you didn't have any Apple thing on your Android device, you're kind of like, well, you're out of luck. And at least now it'll play. But I like to give through a browser. So I like to kind of like, here's the top 4. If you need more than that,
I think if you're in Instagram, like on stories, you can now, everyone can link in story. Like that's finally a thing. You can put a sticker or whatever they call it. There's some advantage to being able to click that, have it come up in the browser and not be your website. And then I have to go find the player, or maybe the player's on the website, and that doesn't work so well. When you get this pretty UI that like opens up right in the app or something and lets you, I don't know. There's something to it.
Well, the tough thing is technologically, you can only get so far with even smart links. Like the whole thing that I do with followthepodcast.com, which is a feature of my podcast reviews. That's what Dave was referring to. There, I can detect the type of device in the browser visiting the page. So I can hide all Apple-only options when an Android device visits the page. And I can show only Android specific options there, and vice versa, and with whatever platform, or change the name of something. Like if you visit the page on Windows, you are going to see that it says iTunes, because it's still iTunes on Windows, even though it's Apple Podcasts on Mac OS and iOS. But you can't technologically make a page without some kind of cookies, and cookies are bad now. You can't make a page that shows only the link that the audience actually uses. So like, I can't make it so if you visit theaudacitytopodcast.com/follow, you will see only an Overcast button if you listen to Overcast. And that's where I think that the more experienced podcast listener is getting more comfortable, and they've been this way actually for many years. I think that when they hear of a podcast, if they're already very familiar with listening to podcasts, when they hear of a podcast they're interested in, they most likely open up their favorite podcast app and go straight to that podcast, and probably jump straight to pressing that subscribe or follow button. And then they decide later if they want to keep it around. That's what I've seen many podcast experienced people do, especially podcasters. So I think that whole thing of worrying about giving a specific call to action that includes whatever app or device they have, listing the 50 different apps that you're in, I don't think you have to worry about that, because the website option is there for people who aren't as familiar, aren't already going to open their podcast app to your podcast. But Podcasting 2.0 is also working on some features we're calling fast follow and some other things to try and make this better within the podcast app. But again, that's only if you tap on a link. It's not if you visit a URL or if you see a URL somewhere.
Liberty Dude asks, is it not an assumption a podcaster has a website? Which is also, it's an interesting question. You're like, no, I would say it's not. I mean, obviously it matters who you are, right? But I think there are plenty of big podcasts that probably don't even bother with a website, right? It's the podcast, and they distribute to a lot of people. Or it might be like the website that is on their sort of platform, right? You could be on a big platform like The Ringer or something. I don't know.
I'm going to say, I've seen people where you go to their website and it's some big network, and they're one of 12 shows, right. And you're like, wait, where's the thing? And then I'm trying to find a link to subscribe, and you're like, hold on.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, do you need a website if you're a podcaster? I would say, obviously, I think so. I think it's important. I think it does a lot of things. Is it the thing that's going to break your podcast? Not having a website? No. Could you build a massively successful podcast without a website? Absolutely. And if you're starting and your website is the thing that's not letting you start, don't worry about the website. All right. My favorite, I don't know what it's called anymore. Pod Pages or something like.
There's Pod Page. There's Podcast Page.
Podcast. Yeah. There's a couple now that are the one that was run by is it Brendan?
Brendan. That's Pod Page.
If I was new, I would probably just use that. It makes it super simple. Like I said, if you're starting and you're having a problem, there are now third-party options, and you can add your own URL to that, so it's not locked into a third-party option that have like all the things that we've had to figure out over the years. You're like, do I have a subscribe button? Which ones? How do you contact me? All this stuff. They figured it out pretty well. We're in a pretty cool time where that stuff is optimized for a podcast specific. We've always tweaked blogger pages. I mean, not blogger specific, but pages made for blogs or for something other than a podcast.
My favorite is Wix, which has lots of options, but they have a quote podcast feature. And all you do is you put in your feed and it puts all your episodes there. Then this is yet again where another company that hops on podcasting because they want some of that sweet, sweet podcast money. And they import all your files onto their server. So anybody that listens on your website does not count in your media host. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
What are you doing that for? Why would you even do that? Like,
because they don't understand podcasting.
It's a cost to them. Yeah. Someone run in. Wait, you're spending a lot of money you don't need to spend.
If you move your show to Kajabi, they change. We're going to get our geek on. They change your GUID, which is basically the social security number of every episode, which doesn't hurt it when you move to Kajabi, But when you go there and go, oh, these guys are so much better at marketing than they are podcasting, and you go to move back, you've got a real headache on your hands because now you're
I
going to
think you mean the URL, the file name.
the actual GUID.
Because if you change the GUID when you move to Kajabi, that messes up your audience.
It messes. Well, yeah, it's just a mess. But yeah, I can look at a Kajabi feed, and you'll see where the GUID, instead of being a bunch of numbers and stuff, is like Kajabi 2757. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was not the GUID when they came from Captivate. So you're just like, what are you doing over there? So they do have 301 redirects now, so they're getting there, But some of these companies that jump into podcasting because it's the new hot thing, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of missed it a little bit.
What are some
But
other
they're jumping
things you guys think about? Is there anything with the new year coming that you're like, now's the time, I'm gonna do this?
Here's the thing that I like and scares the bejesus out of me is the whole AI thing,
Right.
because it's like when you have something it's like, I don't know, a superpower, right? Like Superman could be a real, like, not nice guy if he wanted to and rule the world, but he's out for good. And the older I get, the more I go, oh, this could be great for humanity. I go, yeah, but it's not, because somebody's going to take it. And I actually saw there was a YouTube video about a guy. It's like, make a course in 5 days. And he said, he was talking about Chat GPT, ABG, whatever it is. And he said, I typed in my subject, and he goes, and it literally wrote the course for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and they were saying it like, look, you don't have to work. You just type a few things into, this and copy and paste it, and there's your course, and you sell it, and money falls from heaven. And I was like, oh, so the worst case scenario is somebody's going to type in a subject, and they're going to spit out a script, and then they're go, because I don't know about you, every time I go to Facebook now, there's something voice, and it's getting realistic. The put in a text and have it come out in a speech, and I was like, so pretty sure we're just going to have podcasts that are generated by robots, read by robots.
And listened to by robots.
And listened to, yes. Well, actually, there will be listened to by
good.
robots because of that one service now that's listening to your podcast to make sure you're brand safe, and then you'll get a score. So I'm, on one hand, like Cap Show, I loved because Deidre, when I talked to her, she's like, look, this isn't like it's AI generated blog posts and show notes and text. She's like, it'll get you about 85% there. So she's like straight up like, this is not going to do it. Like, you still got to throw that human point in there somewhere.
I mean, it will, though. Within 6 months, it will get you
Yeah.
all the way there. And then, but I mean, that you're talking about something, I don't know what this is. So you're talking about something that listens to your show and then writes the show notes for you?
Yes,
'Cause I need that.
there's Cap Show. Cap Show is pretty slick. I
think if it's okay, if you go through it yourself, you should at least read it. I hope people are at least reading what the bot spits out.
Yeah, well, and then I had one of my shows transcribed through Otter, and then went to Chat. What is it?
GBT? No, I think it's Chat ADHD.
GPT. Yeah, and I said, write a podcast episode summary based on this, and paste it in my transcript, and it then rewrote it. And I was like, okay, that's kind of spooky, because it wasn't bad. Now, there were some things in there, again, you got to read it, because I was like, I did not say that.
I can't wait to use it for a YouTube video, especially you're talking to people here who have established internet presences where like literally years of stuff. So you could say, I am going to do this. My next like camera review, I'm going to say, write me a review of the Sony whatever in the style of Ray Ortega. And then I'm like going to be like, wow. But honestly, I am very curious what it comes up with, because there's no reason why I wouldn't use it if I went through it myself and went, yep, I'm going to say that. And then I'm going to add, I'm like, well, I also have this to say. I'm very curious from like sort of an outline perspective, what it'll spit out and may help me think through the review. Maybe it might actually do a better review than me. So that might be helpful.
Yeah. I love that if you have a problem with a blank page, it can kind of get you going.
Writer's block.
And so, like I said, there's parts of this I'm like, that's pretty cool. I just know that if you use it for good, it could be really helpful. But I can also see where other people are like,
and they're going to do that, and they'll make a few dollars, but then quickly you realize, why am I following this person? That's just repetitive. It's the same stuff that you're going to start seeing the same course spit out like over and over. And we all know that people come and then they pretty much stay because of who you are, right? Like they could take a podcasting course
Right.
from Dave or Daniel or me, but it's like, I like the way Dave says it,
Yeah.
right?
There's a radio station here at night, and probably after 7 o'clock, Siri becomes the DJ, and it's literally like Eddie Money, 2 tickets to paradise, and then they'll play another song, whatever, Def Leppard, pour some sugar on me, and then they'll play 10 minutes of ads. There's no personality at that station at all. So that's the one thing where you have to be yourself and let your freak flag fly, because a robot trying to emulate your freakiness is probably not going to get it exactly right, at least for now. Daniel, I'm dying to hear what your thoughts are on AI.
Yeah, so I've probably been using AI the most and the longest of the three
Yeah.
of us here. And I don't say this to brag or out of arrogance or anything like that, but I understand. I'm not an AI expert, but I do understand what the AI is designed for, what it's doing, and I see a lot of misunderstandings about what the AI is and what it's doing. And it's some of that idea of, well, for one thing, it's being abused and misused by a lot of people. Like there will be the non-experts who will go to AI, whatever AI system that is, and they'll say, make a course about how to podcast. And they'll then sell that course. And it's completely AI generated. The person who did that is not an expert in podcasting, so they don't really know if the content is all that good. They have not fact checked it. They're not putting in their own voice, their own experience. AI is really an assistant. It's not an employee. And I see so many people trying to look at and treat AI as if it's an employee, as if it knows everything. Like I hear people, this is a good example. I don't mean to, this is not throwing him under the bus, but this is just a specific example. Adam Curry has ridiculed AI because he's gone to AI and he's asked it, what is podcasting 2.0? And it gives him some answer that's not at all correct. That's because AI doesn't know, or at least right now, it doesn't know what podcasting 2.0 is. Even some of the AI, very advanced AI models I've worked with have only skimmed, I think they said 70% of the internet. So there's still a lot of knowledge that it doesn't know yet. You can assume things like Wikipedia and the most popular websites it's skimmed through. But even like they were showing at that time, a couple of years ago, they were saying, you ask AI about COVID-19 and it doesn't know anything about it. But if you feed it information, like you say, this is what COVID-19 is, this is certain information about it, now write me a very dire warning, or write me a comedy drama based on COVID-19 or something like that. Now it has material to work with, because the AI system, a way I like to describe it is, it's basically like saying, oh, I see what you did there. I'm going to do more of that for you. That's what it's doing. So they've fed it certain information in order to get certain kinds of results. And what you have to watch out for, though, is the uncanny valley, or where the devil is in the details, messing everything up for you. And I see this especially with the image generation AIs, which I've been playing with more recently. And there are, again, certain models that are tuned to certain things. Like there's a whole image generation model tuned specifically to the movie Tron Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So you can put, and I've been having fun with this, like put different actors or actresses in to see what would they look like as a pirate, or as someone from Tron Legacy, or a Disney cartoon character, or that kind of stuff. There's a lot of fun. But then when you start looking at it, you realize, oh, that eye looks really weird. That nose is kind of strange. That arm doesn't quite look the same as the other one. And the background buildings, the windows are all mixed up. They're not straight. And you start to notice all of this stuff that just doesn't quite look right. And I see that in the writing too. If you take the writing straight from the AI, it just doesn't quite look right. And that's where it's an assistant. It can get you, like Dave said, like 85% of the way. And then you need to use your knowledge and skill and communication abilities to go in, fact check the stuff and improve it, put it in your voice. It can help you. It's not going to do everything for you. And I think, yes, it will get better. It's still not going to do it for you, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. And, also just part of it is, that whole thing with like, things are going to get better. Transcriptions are going to get better. more accurate. They're pretty accurate. I'm surprised at what even like Google does the auto closed captioning. Amazing. Like it's amazing.
Well, when you say that, though, consider that we're talking from American perspectives
yes.
with
For this,
very
yes.
low
Yeah.
level accents. You start putting
Yes.
in like a Scottish person who's speaking American, I mean, not American, speaking
Oh.
English
Just wait
with a
until
Scottish accent.
wait until AI can bring our podcast to all of those languages, right? We're going to get AI versions of ourselves in Portuguese.
I
Fantastic.
don't
Now
know.
it shows in Portuguese. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I don't think it's AI, but I know Brian Barletta is paying some service to put his
Right.
show out in Spanish, and I'm not sure.
That's a big thing now too. That's another YouTube innovation. Mr. Beast kind of like really led this. If you don't know who that is, but it's like I don't remember who he's talking to, but he's just like,
Joe Rogan.
he's just like, we just put all our stuff out and our channel is copied in Spanish. People do that, even overdubs. Like you're seeing that on Netflix, like big shows.
Yeah.
Is it like that are like coming out of Korea are overdubbed, and it's like, yeah, it's overdubbed. It's not as good, but you are starting to see some great content from people you wouldn't have seen before because it's in your native language. So I am very excited about being able to do that. Talk about growing your audience, man. Now
Yeah.
you might not have the ability to communicate with that audience as easily, but you will. Like the fact that you can walk to another country right now, say something to an app, and then it has it spit it. You can have a conversation with someone who's not in your native language, like, and you don't speak the language. There are exciting, it's very exciting. And of course, everything new is going to be abused. So you'd have to watch out.
It's going to be fun to watch. I do know that. I'm going to pop.
Yeah, the
some
image stuff
popcorn.
is fun as heck. Please, someone make us go to AI, go to what are the ones I've tried a couple.
Lenzo something. I know.
And that's like the profile picture one, but like
Yeah.
I'm blanking. Anyways, go to one of those and make Podcasters Roundtable as babies. I've seen like celebrities as babies. Like if you can think of it, it can do it, and it's pretty entertaining at its lowest level.
I know the first time I talked about AI on Ask the Podcast Coach, I had AI generate the album art, and the person had 6 fingers. And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
right.
That'd be fantastic album art. That's a great way to use the art for your album art because people are gonna look like it's almost a Where's Walt, like a what's wrong with this image? What was that in highlights? Like
Yeah.
Dating ourselves. Highlights
Sitting
was a
in the
magazine
dentist office.
Yeah. If you're old, I bet they're still there. There's got to be highlights in the dentist office.
Well, they never updated
Doctors.
them. It's from
They're the same highlights that we read.
1972. Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
It's good content. Hey, good content doesn't go out of date.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, is there anything else you guys want to bring up? But we did, we tend to linger on subjects here and don't get a full breadth of conversations, but that allows us to talk about this same one next year if we wanted to. Anything else, or we can see our way out of here? Let this live audience go. I mean, again, everyone here live, if you're listening later, thanks so much. We're glad to be back. And there's so many people here live. And I say that, and I'm talking like, 15 people is incredible for announcing a live stream on the same day. So, and I'm seeing so many faces that we know. So it's been really cool to see you all in the chat. So thanks everybody. But, if you have something else, throw it out. But otherwise, let us know where we can find your podcast. Now, look, I've already signaled we're ending. These CTAs are no good. But the people in the chat are power people. They'll check out your website, Dave. I promise.
I'm going to do this. If you go to youtube.com/David Jackson, I should know this. I'm like 9 people away from 3,000 subscribers.
Ooh.
So
Nice.
You have enough people in the chat to literally put you over the edge right now. So if that happens, we know where it came from because this is live, not published to the feed yet. So Dave, if you see that go over 3,000 in the next hour, you have a lot of people in the live chat.
URL.
Yeah, we do. You can do that here.
It is David Jackson. Yes. youtube.com/David Jackson will get you there.
You sure it's not at David Jackson? I don't know what YouTube.
It's at David Jackson too. Yeah.
See, why are you doing it, YouTube? It was fine before.
Yeah, that whole at thing is
get
actually unnecessary.
So unnecessary.
For many of these things, like when they sent me all of the emails about the usernames, I already had usernames, and I can access the same page with and without the at sign. So it's kind of weird, but I guess it was more for those who didn't have their own handle yet on YouTube.
Yes. All right. Well, Daniel, what is wasted CTA.
It's not a waste. I'm going to make this valuable because I'm going to give a tip of value that you will want to stay for after the call to action while I think about it. Go to theaudacity2podcast.com. One of the things that I really want to see podcasters doing in 2023 and beyond is incorporating podcasting 2.0 stuff and really demanding it from their publishing tools, from their podcast apps. And at this point, I say, if your podcast publishing tool does not support podcasting 2.0, at least to some level, and is committed to doing it more, move, get a different tool. I'm really excited about podcasting 2.0, and I've been implementing some of those features on my own podcast now that my podcast is back, and I'm experimenting with some things, changing some things. And I just published an episode recently that I think a lot of podcasters will be interested in, on how to make your cover art for an episode actually show, even in Apple Podcasts. So check out that and all of my other content over at theaudacity2podcast.com.
Awesome. Dave, I think you're down to like 7 now. There's at least 2 subs. You're so close, man. So
We're getting there.
congrats. You're getting there. He's staring
Thanks.
at it. Like you did that. You pulled up the live YouTube subscribe count. You watch them tick down. All right.
No,
Well, hey, what, Dave?
Well, I was going to say, where can we
Is it?
find you, Ray?
Oh, no. I think you can find me where you can find all of us. We do have a website, podcastersroundtable.com. Jump off to YouTube or social, wherever you want to communicate with us. It's all there. And yeah, thanks again, everyone. 2023, it's off to a good start because we're back, and we'll keep coming back.
Will the Podcaster Studio ever be back?
I don't know, man. Like, I don't like saying things about podcasting without you guys anymore. So I just I don't have I don't have enough to say by myself. I mean, I always have opinions, but I need you guys to have a conversation. I'm enjoying the campfire style. Once we did the roundtable, I was like, yeah, it's one of those things you always want to bring back. But I don't know. We're having fun here, so we'll keep with it, and we'll keep the rest in mystery. It's the only way those people will stay subscribed. We will see you next time. 164 podcasterroundtable.com. Wave goodbye. That's right. We do that. See ya.